It's the big chill.
The big chill? Is this the last big chill? I hope so.
One would hope.
Cool. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. Corey Singletary here with the Citizens Utility Board with another episode of CUB Tracks alongside me.
Tom Content.
How's everybody doing? I hope everyone's good. So on this very cold day, we thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about heating.
That's right. We were all thinking about heating because it's so friggin' cold out.
It is in fact quite cold. But we had a few weeks ago, right before Christmas, folks particularly in the Milwaukee area and a little bit in the Madison area, had some challenges with heating. I've heard a few stories, not just in the press, but also from family members as well. But I don't know if you want to give a rundown on.
Sure. On yeah. So all of a sudden, on December
23rd,
22nd, 23rd,
22nd, 23rd.
We were just getting ready for the holidays, but all of a sudden, news alerts came out, and We Energies was asking for customer conservation on the natural gas side, to turn down the thermostats to 62 degrees. There was a problem with the pipeline system with one of they're served by two pipelines. This was the Guardian pipeline, and they put out a public appeal, which is a very rare thing in Wisconsin. And so that's I didn't get a phone call. I just saw the news alert, and then like other We Energies customers, like, what the heck is going on? A lot of questions, but it's the pipeline. The Guardian pipeline had a malfunction that in northern Illinois that stopped the flow or slowed the flow of natural gas north into Wisconsin on that pipeline system by about 35%, very suddenly. So I went back and saw it on this on the Guardian Pipeline's homepage, where they issued a critical customer notice, but that critical customer notice led to a lot of more impacts for a lot of customers who weren't sure what was exactly happening, and some folks heeded the call to turn down their thermostats, and others did not, as it turned out.
Yeah, it's I mean, as you mentioned, it's not something that happens very often. For an interstate pipeline to lose 1/3 of their ability to deliver gas to a section of the country, particularly Wisconsin, is pretty unusual. And we haven't really seen these types of calls for conservation very much. And I know that you had seen it in the news. My wife's cousin, we were over there in January for sort of a late Christmas, beginning of January, and they actually mentioned that I think they got some notification from MG&E asking them to conserve on their heating, to turn down their gas usage a little bit, and that's it raises heating beyond what I think most people just normally are concerned about, which is bills, which is another thing we can talk about, but. I thought it was. I think the part that you mentioned about some people, heeded the call to conserve, and some people don't. One of the things that it jumped out to me was, we talk a lot about energy efficiency. We talk a lot about demand response programs that allow typically the utility to sort of cut back on usage to make certain that the utility service stays active, stays going, whether it's electricity or sometimes natural gas. And it made me think about a lot of different things in terms of what the utility of the future might look like, because it was interesting. They had from, I think it was the Wisconsin Public Radio had their story on it. Utilities face challenges with extreme cold that threaten energy supplies, by Daniel Keating. That was from January 19, kind of looking back at the event. And there was a We Energies customer who was quoted in that article saying, "I'd rather have 60-degree heat than no heat." And so she, sort of responded to the utilities call But we were talking to some of our utility counterparts a couple of weeks ago, asking them about this event. And they actually said that, some people, responded and cut back on their gas usage. But they on the flip side, you had people who were essentially heat hoarding. They got the notice that, something's wrong with the gas system, so I'm going to crank up the heat now to warm my house up in case the gas goes out.
Right. I think there. Yeah. Concern if the system's this vulnerable, should I give myself a boost in case there's no heat 12 hours from now? That was one element, and then I heard of a different element, which was kind of the stick it to the man element of just people saying, oh, if We Energies was obviously in the news a lot for the rate increases that were pending last year, and so a lot of people may be cynical about monopoly utility. They just wanted to stick it to them. So I heard some people put on their natural gas fireplace after the alert came out. And it's like, really? So.
Yeah, and actually that same We Energies customer in the exact same piece, she also mentioned, she says, what did she say? I'm always leery when a huge company puts the onus of the problem on the customer instead of taking responsibility. Which is sort of that similar perspective. And I think particularly for We Energies customers, you mentioned the big rate increase that people will actually start seeing on their bills soon. If not by now, then in a couple of weeks when their January usage is billed. But also this past year, there were all those storms that took out electricity service in particular. I know you had some outages.
Exactly, 2021 and again 2022. So.
Yeah. So We Energies has had kind of it's been a little tough sledding the last couple of years, and then just around Christmas, they have to send out this notification to their customers.
Exactly, and then it's just the whole. It's what's so striking was that the day after that, various parts of the country had issues on the electric side of the grid, where there were rolling blackouts through the Carolinas. There was problems in the East Coast, and then what was striking to me was that on the electric side, after all this happened, FERC and NERC, which is the federal energy regulator and then a national reliability overseer for the electric grid, both said that they were going to do an investigation into what happened, and let's get to the root cause on what happened with the electric situation. But we still haven't seen an investigation on what actually happened here with the natural gas side. And I think Guardian and the media coverage that we've seen, Guardian hasn't been very responsive as to what actually the root cause of this issue was that led We Energies to actually go take steps with its business customers first to get them to stop production or conserve and cease using gas to help the residential side, but then have to take that further step of actually doing the calls for conservation.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that electric investigation. I think you mentioned that Guardian, described it as a force majeure outage, which is essentially fancy legal language for act of God. And as most people would describe it. And so they're saying, well, there's nothing we could have done about that. But it does raise this interesting issue of utility reliability.
Right.
And I think the interesting part for me, as working a lot on the rate side and sort of customer-facing programs and that type of thing, is one of the things that people have been talking about in the utility industry for years now is increasing the different types of customer-facing demand response options. Usually with electric, but gas is in the conversation right now, and seeing the different kinds of responses that customers had to basically almost a critical event for the utility makes me wonder how people would view things like wider deployment of smart thermostat programs where the utility can adjust your thermostat at home to cut down on peaks on the system and make certain the system stays up, and also to reduce costs. I don't. What do you think?
I mean, I think there's I think you're raising a really important issue, which is, I think, with the polarization that we've seen in the country, and with just how divisive everything has become, this whole like let's all work together to solve the problem, that kind of collaboration that's needed for those kind of things. I think there's going to be a certain section of folks that's going to be like, no thanks, I'm out. I think there's still valid programs, and I think there's still but how big is that percentage of customers that will actively want to participate in that? I mean, a lot of the utilities that have these demand response programs, they throw in a little incentive, a gift card or a discount on your bill or something to try to make it go. But it seems like those incentives are still going to be needed to make these go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll circle back to that in a minute. It's interesting you mentioned the polarization, because it's almost I wasn't old enough to experience it myself, but my understanding is back in the Jimmy Carter days, the whole the whole notion of like putting on a sweater to conserve energy, like even just that at that time, this decades ago,
right?
This whole notion of customers having or that customers should or may want to change their behavior to either save on their bills or to contribute to the reliability of the system and to control costs for all customers is not a new problem. But I think you raise this polarization issue that I think even today would probably be even worse than it was back in the 70s.
Right.
So you mentioned the incentives and whatnot. One of the things that coming out of like the 2000s, one of the, all the sort of economists in the room in the utility regulated space were basically like, well, if you put the incentives out there, you put the price signals out there, customers will respond and customers will conserve. But so events like this gas event and other things make me kind of wonder whether that's the right way to go, to really put it all on the customer to change their behavior, or maybe if it should be a different route where it's maybe the more the utility controls that and it's kind of behind the scenes for the customer.
Yeah, I mean, I think high prices do drive behavior change, and I think We Energies has seen that, and other utilities have seen that, where especially maybe after those big. When I'm thinking back to the era of higher heating, the last time we had high heating bills, like the last 2 years, was way back before fracking took hold, and we had the hurricanes that shut in a lot of the natural gas supply, and that drove up the prices. And what happened after that is, and the utilities would talk about it, is that customers would resist turning on the furnace. They'd throw on extra sweaters. They'd do what they'd put on extra blankets, and especially especially early in the winter heating season. If the winter heating season is 6 months, say November to April, they would try to push it off until Halloween or November if they could. And I think part of that was driven by those higher prices. And it's not uncommon for people to say, for folks to in the urban areas of Milwaukee, you can go through neighborhoods where there aren't a lot of lights on at night because they're trying to conserve. There's conservation going on there on the utility side of things, on utility bills, and so a part of this all feeds into that. High prices do drive behavior change.
So I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think at the high level, most people understand that, at least from the perspective of the bill, the less they use, the less they pay. The interesting part to me is, that's sort of just like a day in and day out behavior change, right?
Right.
Whereas when you have really hot days in the middle of summer, or you have winter storms, or you have system outages that may call for, very time-specific customer responses. And, I think one of the folks we work at with one of the utilities, based on their experience, they kind of are leaning in the direction of what at least he liked to describe sort of the easy button approach, right? Where to make it easy for customers, set the expectations appropriately, but let them know that the utility is going to be controlling certain things to not only help hopefully save the customer money, but also to keep the system running. And it's curious, it's interesting to me, or I wonder on what side of that fence people will land as we go forward, because I think things like Winter Storm Uri, this gas shortage, other things that come up, not only just in Wisconsin but around the country, I think people are starting to realize that utility service isn't like a magic box that electrons and gas and water just come out of, but that there is an interaction between what the customer does and what the utility has to do in order to maintain service.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, they think about it. They don't think about it until you flip the switch and nothing happens, and that's just the facts. And I think the fact that we've seen more events where whether it's extreme weather or reliability issues or storms or whatever it is, we've seen more of this happening, and so now it's more prominent, and I think people are thinking about it more. But as the system evolves, especially as more electric vehicles come online, the whole utility, the participation of the customers in charging at times where prices are low is going to be more and more important for both the utility and for customers' bills, because you're taking all of your transportation dollars that you're now spending at the pump, and you're paying for it when you're charging it on your electric bill. So that's good. This whole participatory system is going to, of utility and customer kind of working together to optimize things, is going to be more critical.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about sort of that utility customer interaction. Now the flip side that we encounter more in the sort of regulatory arena that where we advocate on behalf of customers is events like this can sometimes serve a different role, right? It can serve as a call or a reminder for customers that things like energy efficiency, conservation, smart demand response programs can benefit them and all other customers. But we've seen where utilities will use these types of events, for lack of a better term, in scare tactics, and say, well, we don't want this to happen, so we need to be allowed to spend all this additional money on certain programs.
Capitalizing on a crisis, is that what you're saying?
They would never do that.
I can't. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that there's gambling in this casino.
I believe we saw mention of Winter Storm Uri at least a couple of times in some applications over the last year.
Yep. Well, in some cases that didn't really have anything to do with reliability,
yep,
or some pieces of legislation that didn't have anything to do with reliability that was brought up.
And certainly a cynical person might look at the Guardian disruption before Christmas and think back to the natural gas storage facilities that We Energies got sought approval for to build, and they're constructing down in southeast Wisconsin right now, which, those types of facilities are designed to be able to take up the slack when events like this type of pipeline disruption happens, or when, for whatever reason, gas supply from other parts of the country is either unavailable or very expensive. And so to their credit, I haven't seen We Energies go out in public and say, see, this is why we need this type of infrastructure, at least publicly. But in our arena, where in the regulatory space, these types of things come out, and so there's always that balance, right? Exactly.
I mean, this issue was strictly a pipeline issue, and I think even if you had those storage things, you're still going to need gas from the pipeline. It's a complex system where you need a little bit of everything to make it all go.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to see more analysis or more investigation of to make sure that Guardian's on top of this.
Yeah, so there's that part of making certain that the utilities are doing their job.
Right.
But one of the things that I think is useful for people to start maybe thinking about, utility customers as we progress deeper into the 21st century, is that the fact that there already are, and there will probably be more utility programs or products, depending on how you look at it, that will kind of dip into this sort of demand response, changes in customer behavior type of area, and always make those decisions carefully, but that there is potentially a role for the customer to play in the utility of the future rather than just being at the end point of a pipe or a wire. Particularly as people start doing more things like installing solar or storage and things like that, because then you're definitely in more sort of a participatory transaction sort of role with the utilities.
Well, yeah, and more of these programs are coming. I mean, MG&E started its MG&E Connect program, which is with linked to smart thermostats and demand response, and Alliant has one, correct? Yep,
yes.
They launched one, and now We Energies and WPS are going to propose one as one of the outcomes of the rate case from last year, as part of the settlement.
Yep. Well, we agreed to it in the settlement.
They agreed to it in the settlement, and it was eventually adopted.
Yes,
I'll put it that way.
The commission ultimately saw merit in that particular aspect of the aspect of the settlement.
Yes.
So we'll be looking forward to working with the utilities as well as other stakeholders in the commission on bringing those types of programs forward, because smart. I think the foot in the door for customers to kind of get comfortable with these types of things is like smart thermostat programs, because it's the lowest lift. You get all the cool benefits of having a smart thermostat at home, right, all the programmability and scheduling and this, that, and the other thing. But it does kind of plug customers into this more interactive future with the utilities. But circling back to the beginning, heating, we're still in the middle of the heating season, and we've said it a million times up to this point, but we're going to keep saying it until it warms up eventually. But, gas prices continue to be a little higher on average than they were in years past. So that, coupled with the rate increases for the utilities on not just the gas side but the electric side, that efficiency and conservation remain important. And so folks should take steps to try to control their heating bill, including managing their heating if they can. Always be safe.
Exactly. I mean, I think there was a little bit of hope because we were having one of the warmest Januaries on record for at least for most of the month. And then there was a little bit of hope because natural gas prices did ease up from where they were last summer a bit, that there was hope that, maybe we were going to be out of the woods on a really expensive heating season. But I think by and large, it's still not going to be cheap, and it's still going to be, even the utility said, even with that, the little bit of moderation, they're not backing away from their forecasts of higher cost this winter, which on top of higher cost last winter, which means it's one of the highest in about a decade. So take steps where you can. We wear an extra sweater at our house. We generally put it down to 65 at night, just because we got thick blankets anyway. So, but it's just little steps to save.
Yep, and again, as always, we'll continue to remind folks, if you or someone could benefit from utility energy assistance, particularly during this heating season and during the disconnection moratorium, make certain to reach out to the Wisconsin Home Energy Assistance Program. They can get you connected with the right resources and get you down the road to applying for and hopefully qualifying for assistance for income eligible folks. Before we kind of wrap up, a couple of things looking forward. The commission issued its agenda for this week, and they're going to open up they're going to finally open up the docket for 2 new storage facilities. I think we've mentioned it in the past that Alliant Energy is looking to build, and we were talking about it a little while ago. Coming soon will be cases before the commission dealing with all of the fuel costs from last year, and it's some utilities, it's not so bad. I mean, there's none of the big utilities where it's good, but there's going to be some rate adjustments that the utilities are going to be seeking to recover some of the fuel costs that they weren't able to collect from customers last year. Up to the biggest deficit is from Alliant Energy, which is basically about short about half of what it cost them to pay for all the fuel to make the electricity last year.
Yikes! And just for clarification, so that would be on electric costs, electric bills at some point after the PSC looks at that.
Correct.
Not on the natural gas bills, but more on the electric side, because it affected their fuel costs and so what happened was the price of natural gas went up, as we saw, dramatically during the year, and much higher than the fuel costs that the utilities had proposed and the PSC had set for 2022. So that's gotta be dealt with.
Yeah, and actually, if anyone's curious, I've noticed that Mr. Ebert over at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel is a fan of graphs and pulling data from all kinds of places. So his story from January 20th, looking at this gas supply system outage, actually has a nice graph of gas prices way at the bottom, I think, over the last year. Or maybe it wasn't that piece. No, it was.
Oh, there it was.
January 31st.
Today's story.
Today's story. He's got a nice graph of gas prices over the last couple of years. So if you're wondering why things are so expensive, that can help clue things in. Yeah. So we'll continue to keep an eye on those things, and I hope it warms up.
Anytime would be good. Again, we were on track for at least in Milwaukee area, on track for the second warmest January on record. But then it was like a freeze advisory this morning with wind chills well below zero. So it's funny. I talked to somebody, Western Wisconsin, the other day, and they said, one of the snowiest winters they've had in years. And I'm like, okay, there are many different microclimates happening in Wisconsin this winter. So it's fascinating to see how different our southern versus northern versus western Wisconsin is when it comes to the weather. But yes, let's get rid of winter when we can.
All right, cool. Well, I hope folks have found this interesting or educational. As always, rate, like, subscribe. If you're not subscribed, either through your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, please do so you don't miss any future episodes. But with that, thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Until the next time.
All right. Catch you all in the next one.